order.
You want answers?
I'm entitled to them.
You want answers?
I want the truth.
Warning. The content of this video is designed to cause you to read the scriptures for yourself. When you read the scriptures for yourself, you will find the truth. And if you find the truth will set you free.
Do you swear on the Constitution of the United States to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Ain't no thing.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a fascinating topic that doesn't get a lot of attention in Western Eurocentric theological discussions. We're exploring the idea that the ancient Israelites were Black Semitic people, and I'll be showing you some compelling biblical evidence to back this up. Stick around, and let's get into it. Let's start with Adam and Eve. According to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. Let's examine this. The soil in most regions of the world is often rich, dark, and fertile. One type of soil common on earth is clay soil, which has a rich, reddish-brown, ruddy tone. The word for dust here means dust, clay, earth, or mud. The Hebrew word being used for ground here is Adamah, meaning soil, ground, earth. The root of this word is Adam. Many Eurocentrists use this as an excuse to call Adam white, because only white people can have reddish skin due to blushing skin. But this argument is silly. The word ruddy, when used to refer to an animal or insect, always refers to a reddish-brown color. Every single animal that has been classified as ruddy is reddish-brown. Even in the 1537 Matthew Bible, the word ruddy is substituted with the word brown. Through the use of the Hebrew word Adamah, we can infer that Adam was melanated of a healthy, reddish-brown skin tone. And this would be the same case for Eve, who was formed from the rib of Adam. Let's be logical. From a genetic standpoint, how would Adam and Eve being white work? White parents cannot produce a black child. So how did black people come to be? Genetic inheritance and variation explain that two black parents can produce offspring with varying skin tones, from fair skin to very dark, brown, or black. In contrast, two white parents cannot naturally produce a black child, as they lack the genetic information necessary for producing significant melanin, the pigment responsible for darker skin. The first humans had to be black. However, don't just take my word for it. Let's hear from a couple of scientists.
I picture him very much alive and with a lot of the basic feelings that we have today. Confidence one point, insecurity at another.
Finally, Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggest he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I like the expression. He's got a very forceful look.
He's intent on something, maybe taking over the world. You begin to get perhaps an insight into why these guys won out and why this guy's our ancestor.
Great Scott!
Professor Rebecca Kahn was the pioneering scientist who uncovered the first all-important clue.
started working on human mitochondrial DNA so that I would have some kind of view that was objective, that would help me understand and help other people understand how humans around the world were related. I was very excited when I first started to get evidence, and it was so counterintuitive. I'd put 20 Europeans and 20 African Americans on a sheet of X-ray film, and every African American showed differences, and all the Europeans looked the same. As we got more samples from different areas, I realized that it was a difference in the pattern, and that this whole new type of evidence based on mitochondria was going to change the way we thought about modern humans.
In 1987, Kahn and her colleagues published a paper showing for the first time that the markers stretched back to Africa, showing quite clearly that this was the birthplace of the human race. New Guinean tribesman, Parisian bartender, American teacher, Polynesian farmer, all were improbable relatives linked through one black woman 150,000 years ago. Their findings caused a sensation. And this is what she looked like. Using forensic reconstruction techniques, muscle and flesh have been added to the skull and provide us with the very first glimpse of how our genetic mother might have looked 150,000 years ago.
One of the earliest regions mentioned in the Bible is Cush, located in what is now Sudan. Along the Nile River, the Cushites are historically documented as a powerful, advanced, and undeniably black African civilization. The Bible identifies Cush as a descendant of Ham, one of Noah's sons, further reinforcing the African origins of some of the earliest people mentioned in Scripture. The Western Eurocentric Christian doctrine that all black people are descendants of Ham, and will speak more on this intentional attempt to whitewash history. Noah had 3 black children, unless we want to claim that the Hamites in Africa and the Cushites in Sudan were white people. Now, Mizraim, Ham's son. So we all agree that Ham was a black man. This means that his sons would have been black too. We know that one of his sons, Cush, was definitely black, which would make Cush's brothers black. Mizraim is one of Cush's brothers. Mizraim. So the progenitor of Egypt descends from a black man, Ham, which means the original ancient Egyptians were black. Now we know that Egypt is a brother of Cush, but for some reason, they want us to believe that the Egyptians were either white or Arab, completely ignoring the fact that one of the main reasons Egypt looks the way it does today is because of multiple invasions by Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Macedonians, Assyrians, and many more. So just to recap so far, we have proven that Adam and Eve were 100% black, down to Noah, who had 3 black children of the same mother, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. We know they are black because Cush, a descendant of Ham, is the progenitor of the Cushites, who are 100% black people. If Ham is black, so are his brothers. We have also proven the ancient Egyptians were black due to Mizraim being a brother of Cush, both descendants of Ham. Through this process, we have proven Ham, Shem, and Japheth are black. Now let's focus on Shem. Shem is the forefather of the Semitic people, and the Israelites are a Semitic people descending from Shem. We can prove Shem is black through his son, Elam. Take a look at these depictions of ancient Elamites that are currently on display in museums today. You can look them up on Google yourself. These guys look pretty black, right? Yeah, they are Elamites from Elam, who is from Shem. So now you don't have to just take my word for it. These are real-life depictions of Elamites, from Elamites themselves, direct descendants of Shem. According to Sir Harry Johnston, who was a renowned British explorer, botanist, artist, colonial administrator, and linguist. In his book, The Negro and the New World, he says, the Elamites of Mesopotamia appeared to have been a negroid people with kinky hair and to have transmitted this racial type to the Jews and Syrians. George Rawlinson, another British renowned scholar, historian, and Christian theologian, said in his 1864 book, The 5 Great Monarchies of the Ancient Eastern World, giving a detailed description, that the Elamites' heads were covered with short, crisp curls. The eye was large, the nose and mouth nearly in the same line, the lips thick, using logic and common sense. If Elam was black like the Elamites, his brothers would have been black too. Yes, that means Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram were black. Let's move on to Abraham the Hebrew and Ur of the Chaldea. Abraham is a descendant of Shem, who we have proven is black through Arphaxad. Abraham is known as the father of the Hebrews, born in the city of Ur, which was in a country called Chaldea. Chaldea was located in what is known as Mesopotamia, and Mesopotamia was the biblical land of Shinar, also known as Sennar or Sumer in earlier times, and in later times known as Babylonia. Chaldea and Babylonia are practically synonymous terms in the Bible. Calling Mesopotamia a misnomer for Chaldeans is largely accurate, because while Chaldea was a region within Mesopotamia, the Chaldeans were not the only people inhabiting Mesopotamia. All that matters now is that an argument can 100% be made for an African relationship with biblical Chaldea that has been noticed by me and also by many scholars. In biblical genealogies, Cush and Mizraim are brothers, who we have proven are black, and Cush beget Nimrod, who was the king of Babylonia or Shinar. Professor Charles Segnobos of the University of Paris, in his book History of Civilization, shed some light on the color of the Chaldeans. It is within the limits of Asia and Africa that the first civilized people had their development. The Egyptians in the Nile Valley and the Chaldeans in the plains of the Euphrates. They were people of sedentary and peaceful pursuits. Their skin was dark, the hair short and thick, the lips strong. Nobody knows their origin with exactness, and scholars have not agreed on the name to give them. Some term them Cushite, others Hamites. Sir Arthur Keith, a British anatomist and anthropologist, said that the Sumerians were dolichocephalic, a skull characteristic predominantly found in black African groups. George Rawlinson stated that the Chaldeans were predominantly Cushite. He was convinced that there was a relationship between the Sumerians and Africans. Sir Godfrey Higgins, an English magistrate and landowner, said the Chaldea were originally Negroes. The Sumerians left no doubt as to how they viewed themselves racially. The inhabitants of Sumer called themselves Sag-Gig-Ga, meaning the black-headed people. So how come everyone's saying there's a relationship between an African population and the Chaldeans? Abraham lived in the black region of Chaldeans, not only a black population, but founded by a black king named Nimrod. Now we move it on to Ishmael and Isaac. We have already proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the ancient Egyptians were black both from an empirical and biblical standpoint. Now Abraham's wife Sarah had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. Because Sarah could not conceive, she asked Abraham to have children with Hagar. So, if the Egyptians were black, making Hagar black, and Abraham was born in a land full of people who were black, with a black king, and we know he did not stand out, making Abraham black, what color would their child Ishmael have been? Yes, black. Let's use another witness, Ishmael's son, Kedar. The name Kedar is a Hebrew name that means dark or swarthy, coming from the Hebrew root word kadar, which means to be ashy, that is, dark colored, to mourn, and to be black. So, a black Egyptian and a black Hebrew have a child, and then that child calls one of his children Kedar, which is associated with blackness. Kedar, Ishmael's son, likes being black so much that even his tents are black, just like him. If Ishmael is black, and he shares the same father as Isaac and Sarah, Abraham's wife was from the same father as Abraham, it makes perfect sense to conclude that Isaac was also black. This conclusion will only be more solidified as we go further down the lineage to the Israelites, who were also black like Jacob and Esau. So we have established that Isaac was black due to him coming from a black father who had black descendants before him. As mentioned before, the case for Isaac being black will be made stronger after all the evidence for Jacob and his 12 sons is shown. With some of these proofs, you can work forward through lineages for evidence, but you have to also work backward using descendants. Isaac, a black man, married Rebekah, who was the daughter of an Aramean, descending from Aram, who was a brother of Arphaxad, and Elam, who were black as proven earlier. This would make the Arameans black, making Rebekah most likely black, which we will also prove through Jacob, his 12 sons, and through Esau too. Jacob and Esau are twins from the same mother and father, Isaac and Rebekah, both black parents. When Esau was born, Esau was described as red all over like a hairy garment. The Hebrew word being used for red here is admoni, with a root meaning of ruddy. And as explained earlier, the term ruddy has always been synonymous with a reddish-brown tone or complexion. If Jacob and Esau were twins, having one be completely black and one completely white. No, both Esau and Jacob were black. However, they varied greatly in complexion. Esau has a reddish-brown tone of skin, and Jacob most likely has a darker complexion. We will revisit Jacob, whose name is later changed to Israel, with more witnesses to prove, without a shadow of a doubt, of his blackness. But for now, because we know that Esau was black, and so were his parents, Jacob also had to be black.
So, my eyes are correct.
Jacob, later known as Israel, originally had 2 wives who were both daughters of Jacob's mother's brother, Laban. Their names were Rachel and Leah. As these sisters were from Jacob's mother's brother Laban, and we know Rebekah was black, Laban would have been black, and his daughters would have been black also. Leah first had 4 children with Jacob, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. As Leah is black and Jacob is black, their children would have been black. Rachel was barren, so she gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob, so Rachel could raise children through her. The Bible does not explicitly state where Bilhah is from. However, since Bilhah was given to Rachel by her father Laban as a servant, it is assumed that Bilhah was from the same area where Laban and his family lived. Among black Arameans, making Bilhah black, which we will prove later on through their children, Bilhah becomes the 3rd wife and has Dan and Naphtali by Jacob. As Bilhah is black and Jacob is black, these children would have been black. Leah then gives her servant Zilpah to Jacob, so Leah could raise more children through her. Again, the Bible does not explicitly state where Zilpah is from, but we can make the same educated assumption that Zilpah was from the same land of Laban and the two sisters, Haran, in Mesopotamia, which we have already proved was a land full of black people, making Zilpah black. She becomes the fourth wife and gives birth to Gad and Asher. Afterward, Leah became fertile again and gave birth to Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah, Jacob's only daughter. Again, as Leah is black and Jacob is black, their children would have been black. Yah remembered Rachel, who gave birth to Joseph and later Benjamin. You get the gist. They were black. These are the 12 sons of Israel, who are the heads of the 12 tribes. All of these 12 sons were black, and we can prove it both biblically and extra-biblically. I would like to personally thank you for visiting the Berean Scholar YouTube channel. If you are enjoying this content, please remember to click like, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. We strive to provide informative videos every week, aiming to enlighten the people of the Most High. Please share this with others so they too can find inspiration and knowledge. Thank you. Now, let's continue revealing the truth with undeniable evidence. We will prove all 12 sons of Jacob were black, and so were their descendants, using the Bible. We will first start with the tribe of Levi, and we will use Moses to prove this point. Moses was a Hebrew Israelite from the tribe of Levi, born from a Levite mother. This was during the time the Israelites were enslaved in the land of Egypt, and Pharaoh was having Hebrew babies executed. To avoid this fate, Moses' mother hides Moses in a reed basket and pushes him into the Nile. He is discovered by the Pharaoh's daughter and is adopted by her, which the Pharaoh also accepts. But wait, we know the Egyptians were black people, and for Moses to have been adopted by Pharaoh's daughter without Pharaoh immediately recognizing Moses as a Hebrew baby and having him killed, he must have looked similar to the Egyptians. As a matter of fact, Moses is mistaken for an Egyptian by the Midianites in Exodus chapter 2, verse 19. So how could Moses, a Levite, be mistaken for an Egyptian who was black people? As a powerful miracle, Yah instructs Moses to put his hand on his chest area, and then when he pulled it out, Moses' hand was quote-unquote white as snow. If Moses was already fair-skinned or white, how would it have been a powerful sign for his hand to have turned just a little whiter than usual?
Bruh.
So you mean to tell me that Moses, a white man, had his white skin turned more white as a powerful sign? I think you and I both know that Moses must have had dark skin, and the power of Yah was shown by turning that dark skin white as snow. The evidence speaks for itself. Moses was mistaken for Egyptians, who we know are black, and his hand was turned white as a powerful sign. This is proof that Moses, a Levite, was a black man, which would make the members of his tribe the same, black. There are many more examples of Israelites being mistaken for black Egyptians, which we will cover. For now, because Moses was black, the Levites had to have been black. We need another witness. Let's use Apostle Paul of the New Testament. Paul is a self-confessed Israelite, descending from the tribe of Benjamin, as stated by himself in Romans chapter 11, verse 1. So, we know that Paul is a Benjaminite, right? So again, Why is a Hebrew Israelite being mistaken for an Egyptian? Paul is mistaken as an Egyptian by Roman soldiers in Acts chapter 21, verses 37 to 38. This is the third time that an Israelite has been mistaken for an Egyptian. It happened to Moses, it happened to Joseph, and now it happened to Paul. Explain to me why the Israelites, who are Semites, are being mistaken for Egyptians, who are Hamites, the same people who the Western theologians claim all black people descend from. As stated earlier, we know that Ham was 100% black because the Cushite, who were undeniably a black civilization, descend from Cush, and Cush is a brother of Mizraim, who we know is the progenitor of Egypt. We both know why. It is because the Israelites looked like the Egyptians as they were both black. This is proof that the Benjamite descending from Benjamin were a black people. So, we have proven that the tribe of Levi, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh were in fact black people. That is 4 out of 12 sons and tribes. Again, technically, since we've proved that Levi is undeniably black, we can immediately say that Judah is black. But again, we have more witnesses. This time, let us use our Adonai, our Savior, the Messiah, Yahuwah HaMashiach, who the world knows as Jesus Christ. I'm not going to bother and repeat the obvious biblical-based fact that the ancient Egyptians were black, because we've said it like 10 times at this point. So, let's just get straight to it. We know that Yahuwah and his family escaped to Egypt in order to escape from the soldiers under Herod's orders to kill Israelite children. Why did the angel tell Joseph to take his family to Egypt out of any place he could have gone? Because again, for the 4th time, we know that the Israelites and the Egyptians looked similar, so Herod's soldiers would not be able to tell an Egyptian baby from an Israelite baby. If Yahuwah or Jesus was white or fair-skinned or whatever nonsense you come up with, I'm pretty sure Herod's soldiers would immediately spot him from the Egyptian population.
Bro, come on!
This proves that Yahuwah, descending from the tribe of Judah, had black skin just like the Egyptian Hamites.
But wait! There's more!
Let's use the book of Lamentations, specifically Lamentations chapter 5 verse 10. This passage describes the Judahites as going through extreme famine, to the point where their skin became blackened. Let's investigate this. It is a scientific fact that black individuals are very likely to experience a darkening of skin due to going through extreme famine, due to malnutrition resulting in hyperpigmentation, which causes the skin to look blacker than usual. However, this is rarely the case when it comes to white, fair-skinned, or olive-toned individuals. They are more likely to have the skin become grayer or paler than usual, or in some cases turn red, but rarely turn black. This passage describes the Judahites as a collective having black skin, meaning that all of them experience the darkening of the skin. And if we are to be logical and consistent with the science, it makes a lot of sense that these individuals were of the initial dark skin tone, and due to malnutrition, their skin became much darker. The same thing is described in Lamentations chapter 4 verse 8, their visage being black. All of the evidence, both scientifically and biblically, points to the Israelites being black people. This proves that the tribe of Judah was indeed a black people. Wait, I almost forgot we have another witness. Let's use Judah and his sons. Judah had a son called Perez, according to 1 Chronicles chapter 4 verse 1. Perez had a son called Hezron, who had a son called Asher. This means Asher descends from the tribe of Judah. Guess what Asher's name means? Yep, black. Now why would Hezron call his son that? Now, unfortunately, we do not have any other witnesses that explicitly prove the blackness of Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. However, as we know, both Judah and Levi are black and coming from the same mother and father. So it makes logical sense to say that Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun were indeed black people coming from the same mother and father as Judah and Levi, making their tribes black also. To further solidify this conclusion, if Joseph was indistinguishable from the Egyptians, then his brothers, Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun, who visited him in Egypt, would have likely shared a similar appearance. This strongly implies that these tribes also had features similar to the dark-skinned Egyptians, making them heads of black tribes also. Don't worry, as the video goes on, I will leave absolutely no room for doubt of the Israelites as a whole, every tribe being black people. Let's deal with the tribes of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. So far we have proven 8 out of 12 tribes of Jacob are black. Levi, Ephraim, and Manasseh of the house of Joseph, Benjamin, Judah, Reuben, Simeon, Issachar, and Zebulun. That is 2/3. If it wasn't clear before, we can now clearly conclude that Jacob was indeed a black man. If all the other sons are black, this makes Jacob black. If we know he is black, and he had 4 other sons from the 2 concubines, Zilpah and Bilhah, who were most likely from the land of Haran, which we have proven was a land full of black people, this means that Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher would not have been pale or fair-skinned. They would have been black. There are no additional witnesses for these sons, but we're about to prove that every single tribe was indeed full of black people, using the Israelites' time in Egypt. I kind of feel bad that we did not have more witnesses for the last 2 points, but this point here is a witness that immediately proves those 2 points correct. Let's talk about the Israelites as a whole when they were in Egypt. Specifically, let's talk about the death of Jacob, also known as Israel. After Israel died, Joseph pleaded to the household of Pharaoh to bury his father in the land of Canaan, due to an oath he made with his father, along with his brothers' households and his father's household, according to Genesis chapter 50, verse 8. Pharaoh agreed, and the Israelites traveled from Goshen to the land of Canaan to bury their father and mourn. I want you to read Genesis chapter 50, verse 11. For the 5th time, why are all the Israelites being mistaken for Egyptians? Why do Israelites who are Semites keep being mistaken for a Hamitic people? In this verse, we have proved that all members of the house of Israel were being mistaken for Egyptians by the Canaanites. Moses was mistaken for an Egyptian by the Midianites and was adopted by an Egyptian family. Paul was mistaken for an Egyptian by the Romans. Joseph could not be differentiated from the Egyptian population he was ruling over. Jehoashai and his family hid amongst the Egyptians while escaping from Herod, and now we have all of the Israelites being mistaken for Egyptians by the Canaanites. This is exactly why they do not want you to believe the ancient Egyptians were black, even though Mizraim was a brother of Cush. They do not want you to believe the ancient Egyptians were black, because by implication, that would make the Israelites black also. Remember this. You now have 5 biblical examples of the Israelites and the Egyptians looking similar, a Semites and a Hamitic population that look alike. A quick question. How familiar are you with the controversy surrounding the ancient Egyptian race? Well, I would argue that unless you've been living under a rock, if you've ever been confronted or even interested in the civilization of ancient Egypt, you will be confronted with this controversy. The question being, were they black, were they white, or were they something in between? Well, one thing that you might be surprised to know is that this debate was actually closed about 20 years ago. And this was in a study that no one ever talks about. So let's have a look at that together.
For a long time, African-centered scholars and academics have pressurized Egyptian antiquities to allow for the testing of skin pigmentation. This can be done via the measurement of the concentration of melanin to ascertain the exact skin tone of mummified individuals. Understandably, Afrocentric anthropologists have always been confident in the knowledge that ancient Egyptians will cluster among the same racial stock as modern Africans. Esteemed historian and physicist Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop developed a simple melanin dosage test that would be able to return the exact living complexion from any mummy based on a minuscule sample of the epidermis. What's important to note here is that melanin concentration is responsible for skin pigmentation. The more melanocytes present in skin, the darker an individual will be. Diop himself stated, although the epidermis is the main site of the melanin, the melanocytes penetrating the derm at the boundary between it and the epidermis, even where the latter has mostly been destroyed by the embalming materials, show a melanin level which is non-existent in the white-skinned races. In the case of the mummies sampled by Diop, in spite of some significant melanin degradation, they still possessed a concentration of melanocytes well within the dark-skinned ranges, normal for black Africans, but considerably beyond the accessible range for Eurasian peoples. Regarding the origin of his samples, Diop continues, "The samples I myself analyzed were taken in the physical anthropology laboratory of the Musée de l'Homme in Paris off the mummies from the Marietta excavations in Egypt. For 2 years past, I have been vainly begging the curator of the Cairo Museum for similar samples to analyze. No more than a few square millimeters of skin would be required to mount a specimen. Naturally, his attempts to advance this test have faced staunch resistance from the gatekeepers of Egyptology, who only benefit from the lack of transparency in a shameless attempt to perpetuate the myth of racial ambiguity. This allows them to make estimations and promote reconstructions that are illogically and politically based on the current ethnically divergent population of Egypt, as opposed to their actual complexion based on a consistent and measurable variable that is easily acquired. However, more recently, during an excavation headed by the German Institute for Archaeology in Cairo in the year 2000, researchers sought to carry out anthropological and paleopathological analysis of the human remains from 3 tombs of the nobles of the necropolis of Thebes West. An additional study was conducted by Makota and Vermeeren, published in 2005. The study sought to test the quality of methods of rehydration for mummified tissue. In the study, samples were taken from a pool of 273 mummies, dated from the New Kingdom. Samples were taken from each organ of each of the mummies. During analysis of the skin samples, biologists noted that skin sections showed particularly good tissue preservation. Although much of the epidermis had already separated from the dermis, the remaining epidermis often was preserved well. The basal epithelial cells were packed with melanin as expected for specimens of Negroid origin. In essence, the epidermis was consistent with black or Negroid African groups based on the density of the melanin.
To recap, Mizraim comes from the man, Ham, and so does Cush. Cush is black, which means Mizraim is black. Mizraim is the progenitor of the ancient Egyptians. The Israelites were constantly mistaken for Egyptians. This makes all the Israelites black. We have proven it all the way from Adam and Eve, and worked our way down to the Israelites and gone tribe by tribe. We have found 5 instances where the Israelites and the Egyptians are confirmed to look extremely similar. The Israelites were black, but we have yet another witness. In ancient times, leprosy was a general term for any skin disease. Leprosy in Hebrew is translated zarath. The Bible describes people with skin conditions as unclean and ostracized, and their skin as a sign of divine punishment. However, some say that the Bible's descriptions of skin conditions actually represent a variety of conditions, but mainly vitiligo. Vitiligo is non-contagious, like tzaraat. Vitiligo causes the hair in the discolored area to turn white. Biblical leprosy. In the Bible, leprosy is used as a tool of punishment for the Israelites. It is described as making your skin go as white as snow, like Numbers chapter 12, verse 10. Do you remember earlier when Yah showed the same ability to make someone go white as snow on Moses? We know that it does not make sense for someone who is already white to turn more white. The fact that this argument is even made at all is saddening. But regardless, when an Israelite has leprosy, everyone knows. It turns the skin white. Another witness is 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 27. The biblical descriptions of leprosy, particularly the emphasis on the disease turning the skin white as snow, strongly suggest that the Israelites were black. The transformation from dark skin to white through leprosy is presented in multiple accounts, including those of Miriam, Moses, and Gazi, and the Levitical laws further explain the diagnosis of white spots on the skin. The condition we know today, vitiligo. The contrast between dark skin and the whitening effects of leprosy provides clear evidence that the Israelites were a dark-skinned people. Leprosy would only be described in such dramatic terms if the natural complexion of the people affected was black, and the condition drastically altered their appearance. Therefore, these biblical accounts serve as strong proof that the Israelites, including all the 12 tribes, were black. Do you remember Simeon called Niger in Acts chapter 13, verse 1? Please read it for yourself.
Acts 13. Now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas, and Simeon that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul.
It tells us that Simeon was called Niger. Just to check, what does this word mean in the biblical context? If you look Niger up in the Strong's dictionary, it says black. So we have a guy literally being called black here. Now I bet the first question that comes into your head is, but why would Simeon be called black if they were all black to begin with? This argument is easily debunked. You first have to understand that nicknames and additional descriptors were commonly used in the ancient world to highlight distinguishing characteristics, even among people of the same ethnic group. These nicknames didn't always imply that the person was unique in their characteristics compared to everyone else, but often emphasized something distinctive about their appearance, personality, or background. Let's get some witnesses. We have Acts chapter 1, verse 13, Luke chapter 6, verse 15. Simeon the Zealot, given the title to distinguish him from other men named Simeon, to highlight his political or religious zeal. We have James the Less, Mark chapter 15, verse 40, given his title to distinguish him from other people named James, possibly due to his smaller stature or his younger age. And we also have Thomas, also called Didymus, John chapter 11, verse 16, meaning the twin. So clearly throughout the Bible, people were given nicknames the same way people have nicknames today. Why Niger though? Throughout history to modern times, darker people in their communities have always received nicknames such as Blackie, Darky, Dark Chocolate, and so on. Do you think that wasn't happening thousands of years ago? Yes, people who were observably darker than the rest of the community would likely receive a nickname among friends and family, and Simeon is no exception. But because we know Simeon was called black, the Israelites must have been black, and his receiving a nickname for his darkness only further confirms that it's quite a black thing to do. Let's use King David himself. Let's use 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. Do you remember how I explained that the historical use of the word ruddy is always applied to animals and insects of a reddish-brown tone? That's the first witness. The second witness is the fact that a Bible version almost a century older than the King James Version replaces the word ruddy with the word brown. So, people from over 500 years ago knew that the word ruddy is synonymous with a reddish-brown tone. The third witness is the use of the word ruddy in a literary context. Having ruddy skin is also associated with having vitality and health, which is clearly pointed out in the verse. Look at this definition from the 1939 International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. It says, and I quote, "The dark-skinned Hebrews found great beauty in a clear complexion." So the Hebrews who were dark-skinned found beauty in someone who had a fair, clear complexion of a ruddy tone. It was associated with having health and vitality, unlike when they were going through famine and had their skin turned oven black. So far, we have explored biblical examples that support the idea that the ancient Israelites were dark-skinned people. We have presented scientific proof, biblical evidence, and various historical accounts. While there is so much more evidence to discuss, I will pause here to give you the opportunity to research everything mentioned in this video for yourself. This channel is called Berean Scholar because, according to Acts 17:11, the Berean people were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica. They received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures daily to see if what Paul said was true. A true scholar will follow the words from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Please join us for more information about the true origins of the Hebrews of the Bible and their identity today. Please remember to click like, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. We try to provide more informative videos every week, where we provide knowledge to awaken the people of the Most High. And please share so someone else can be enlightened.